Welcome to The Chew, your weekly dose of pop from yesterday and today. I'm your host, Jordan Mallory, and I'm a millennial who, if you ask me, grew up in the golden age of pop music, and I think that makes me an expert. Today, in honor of Valentine's Day coming up, I'm going to talk about celebrity crushes and teen heartthrobs. Will they? Oh, will they be my Valentine? Be mine. I'm so not ashamed to admit that I have written some really cheesy poetry for some of my celebrity crushes. I've had posters all over the wall. I've had merchandise and dolls. I've truly been a fangirl really from the beginning. So I felt like it was only right for my first episode, also being around Valentine's Day, to talk about some of the loves of my childhood. But also, it really kind of, as I was planning for this first episode, it really also got me curious about heartthrobs and now. Like, who are they? Is it really the same as it was back then? What do I know, though? Right? I'm kind of old. What do I know? So I'm just here to ramble and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Going from the beginning, right? I can still remember my first celebrity crush. It was 1997. I was 4 years old. I'd just seen Titanic. Yes, very basic, I know, but it was Leonardo DiCaprio. And I won't get into too much into that phase, obviously, because I was so young that even though I call him a celebrity crush, I think it was really just like, wow, I really want to watch this movie over and over and over again, but I don't know why I want to watch this movie over and over and over again. And it wasn't until I got older and learned, what a crush actually was, and then it clicked. And then I was like, okay, Leonardo DiCaprio was probably actually my first celebrity crush. And even now to this day, Titanic is still one of my favorite movies. I will watch it all the time. It's one of those movies that I will watch anytime I want to cry. And 1997 Leo is still incredibly unmatched. I do think though that that little crush planted a seed in my little brain because it really did direct about 99.9% of my celebrity crushes in my earlier years. There was definitely a pattern that built. Like I'd be fair to say, Leonardo DiCaprio aside, Aaron Carter was probably my actual first celebrity crush, because that's when I was able to really say, he's cute. I like his music. I want his face plastered all over my wall. I remember I had Aaron Carter folders, like those like two pocket folders that you get for school. I had them in like fourth or fifth grade, and no one was allowed to touch them. I it's embarrassing, but also like I don't really care. But like I loved those folders. They were like my most prized possession. No one was allowed to hold them. They were just mine. I was literally in love with that man. May he rest in peace. So, you know, when I found out he passed, I was absolutely devastated. I'm pretty sure I cried for like 3 straight days. I immediately called my mom and she knew how heartbroken I was. And I won't get too much into him. I would love to do an episode on, Aaron Carter himself and kind of all of his career later on, and I probably will. Um, I was blessed enough to get to meet him once. I was a lot older. I did it for my birthday, I think, in my early 20s. But it was life-changing. It was great. And so I'd love to be able to kind of deep dive into him and his career. But that was probably my first celebrity crush. But you kind of see the pattern starting, right? It was the cute, blonde, fluffy hair. And then I really think what kind of solidifies that trend is, and I think probably in about sixth or seventh grade, I fell in love with Jesse McCartney. Now, when he was young, I don't know if you've seen pictures of Jesse McCartney when he was young, but he was basically a little Leonardo DiCaprio. It is uncanny how much those two looked alike in the earlier days. I remember watching a behind the scenes um video from like very early in his career when he was still in the boy band Dream Street, and one of the girls from the group that was opening for them was like giggling and was like, "Oh my God, he looks like a mini Leonardo DiCaprio." And it is so true. It's really kind of a little bit uncanny. And, again, I could go on and on about Jesse. May or may not also do an episode strictly on him as this kind of develops. But I was really locked in him for a while. I mean, I still really love Jesse McCartney. I just recently got to see him in concert. It was great. I've seen him a couple times. Um, and before then, I'd been kind of like a casual fan of him because I liked the boy band Dream Street growing up. But for some reason, like it wasn't like I liked them as a group. I liked them as a collective. Like I hadn't actually picked a favorite member at that point. And then as my love for Dream Street grew into almost an obsession, I had a couple different favorite members. I had Jesse, and then I had Chris Truesdale, who was another member. Again, I could go really deep into that, and maybe I will. But whew, you'll notice we're only a few minutes in, and I get on so many tangents. So buckle up. I'll probably go on 80 million different tangents during this conversation, but that's kind of where it was. But anyway, he was my celebrity crush for that kind of large chunk. I would say probably seventh grade up until, oh God, maybe ninth grade. Um, because then I kind of moved on from there, and I'll tell you that in a second. I think there was, of course, an outlier to that blonde-haired, light-eyed baby face love growing up, and that was AJ from the Backstreet Boys. And this is one that I think initially really shocked my mother growing up because I remember being really, really young, and I went up to her. Like I think I watched a video of the Backstreet Boys, so I could not have been more than maybe 5 years old, probably. And I said, I like his tattoos and his piercings. And I think that she kind of knew that that was going to kind of be the trajectory of things because that's now more my type. I guess if you we're not going to get into my whole dating history and everything like that, it's kind of embarrassing, but um tattoos, piercings, always kind of been where I am now, where I live. And so I loved him growing up, and I still do. He is still, in my opinion, the most superior Backstreet Boy. I think he is incredible. I think he does a lot of great work for, speaking out for those who have suffered from addictions. He does a lot of different like charity work. I don't know. He's amazing. He blows my mind. But he's great. And I really hope that someday I ever get to like chance to meet him. And if I do, I know that I would like pass out, throw up both. I don't know. I think I do decently well with like meeting celebrities. I haven't met a whole lot, but I've done, meet and greets and things like that. And I understand they're human, just like you and me. I think I've done pretty well about just kind of having conversations. But there are a few who I get dizzy even think about meeting. And AJ is definitely one of them. The other one is Justin Bieber, and that's kind of where the little tangent kind of goes back on the road because after I think Jesse McCartney, I think Justin Bieber really came into my life and kind of like sunk his claws in because oh my God, I was a believer. And I know that that term is, I don't know if it's outdated, but it's, it kind of is I can't even think of the word. Words are failing me right now. It's not something that people are usually like still using, but it was obviously the term back then, and that's what I was. And I had posters, I had books. I went to see Never Say Never in theaters with my best friend, and I sobbed my eyes out. And I had every one of his CDs, every magazine that he was in. I would try to get my paws on, and I would read every article. I even had that singing toothbrush that he had. And I brought that to college with me. So like I digress. Um, most people in my life still will say, I saw XYZ about Justin Bieber and I immediately thought about you, which I still take as like the biggest compliment in the world. But a lot of people in my life will associate me with Justin Bieber. Like that is how much I love that man. And I still do. I was and I am a ride or die for him. But it was very, real. And then of course, like I said, I still love him. I still enjoy his music, but of course things kind of faded out as I got a little bit older. And so that kind of then brought me to the kind of peak of this question of, I don't think I have any intense celebrity crushes. I haven't had any since then. And, there are definitely celebrities that I admire or that I find attractive. I enjoy their work. But if someone came up to me right now and asked, like, who is your celebrity crush? And I don't think that I could actually give them an answer to who my celebrity crush would be. Now, I'm sure some could say that's because I'm grown, I'm 30, I shouldn't be devoted to a celebrity as I am growing up. And respectfully, I would disagree. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I won't get into this whole side quest here of being a fangirl and the stigma behind it. Being a fangirl is basically the foundation of my journalism career. I've written an article or two about the subject, and there's nothing wrong with being a fangirl at any age. And if you believe that, then you or we really need to dig a little bit deeper into ageism and sexism. And again, maybe we will later, right? This is episode 1. We have a plethora of things that we can hopefully talk about and explore together. But today is a lot more lighthearted, and I'm not going to talk about it. And again, look at me. I've already gotten off track. But back to what I was saying before, I don't think I could ever really answer that question honestly about my celebrity crush. I guess I might still say Justin Bieber because that kind of love really runs deep, like deep into my veins. And let's be honest, that man is absolutely gorgeous to this day. So I guess again, I think if you asked me that, I would probably say Justin Bieber still. But as I was kind of thinking about that and kind of preparing for this episode, it got me curious, like what happened to the whole heartthrob phenomenon as a whole? Like, does Gen Z or Gen Alpha have that kind of devotion, like to that like heartthrob of the time? Or is that just a product of the time that I grew up in? And I say Gen Z as well because I know the youngest Gen Z, I believe, is still like 12 or 13. And then you've got Gen Alpha, who would, I think, be about like 9 or 10, which historically, as you saw me, I started having celebrity crushes very early. And who knows, maybe I'm a different breed. But I like to think that that was pretty normal back then. And that's still probably around the time where you might still start developing those kind of like celebrity crushes. And so, again, as I was kind of thinking, I was thinking back to like how we kind of figured out the heartthrobs. And it's because we lived in the age of like preteen or teen magazines, right? We had Tiger Beat, we had Teen Beat, we had J14. And I know that J14 still exists as a website, but they were also a print magazine. And if you were a teen heartthrob or you were up and coming, then you were on that cover somewhere. Either you had and there were tiers to that. Like you had the big picture, that was like, that was it. Then you had like the smaller pictures on the side. And whether that was an article about you, it was a quiz. So like, there were posters in there. There was the quiz for us to be able to determine if we were like your quote unquote dream girl. And that's where you saw the Zac Efrons, the Jonas Brothers, the Chad Michael Murrays of the world. God, I'm clearly showing my age with that one. But, anywhere between like 2003 and like 2006, when you had Cinderella Story, One Tree Hill, why am I blanking on everything else Chad Michael Murray was in? But I think it's because those are the two that like always stick in my head. But he was like everywhere. Like everybody loved Chad Michael Murray. but he was in those magazines. And, you get kind of what I'm saying. They were on the cover and you knew that they were it. They were those heartthrobs. And so I kind of dug a little bit deeper into those magazines. And according to Google, Teen Beat stopped being published in 2007, and Tiger Beat apparently had a run all the way up until 2019. Again, it makes sense that I didn't really know that it was there. Obviously, I think I stopped reading Tiger Beat in like, probably my sophomore year, junior year of high school. And I don't think I even read Tiger Beat then. I think I was just getting like the posters out of it. But anyway, and J14 just got discontinued in print last month. So it did still exist. But I'm obviously curious, like if teens were still purchasing them and what was the contents. And so I tried to look a little bit deeper and I couldn't really find a whole lot on back issues. There were a few that were available on Amazon when I did a deep dive and I didn't really care to buy them. But I looked at some of the past issues from things like 2020 and even just from the cover, it read more like a tabloid. Like it read like a US Weekly or US Weekly, God, an Us Weekly, or something, from or for, I guess, teens and preteens. And it was like, on the cover, it was like Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello finally getting together. God, I probably butchered her name. Clearly, I'm really not having enough coffee. I'm filming this at 8:45 in the morning. But Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello, are they finally getting together? Or there was like the best and the worst of 2019. And, we definitely had things like that on like celebrity couples, but it didn't still have that same whimsy, I guess, as the magazine that came out earlier. And so I think that's also maybe then a testament to the times. And that could, of course, dive me into a really, really cynical conversation about kids nowadays growing up faster, being exposed to a lot more things via the internet and social media. And, those are a lot of the arguments that older generations like to throw out. And while I do agree of that or with that on some kind of level, I, of course, also remember being there in the early days of the internet. A lot of us joke and call it the wild, wild west. And really, we were exposed to a lot in things like chat rooms that we definitely shouldn't have been in. And, we didn't have a whole lot of internet safety. But there was still a difference there where it wasn't always at our fingertips, right? Personally, my family, we had a computer at home. It was in my mom's room for a while, so I was monitored. And then as I got a little bit older, we had like a designated computer room where the desktop was. And then that, of course, is where I could, go and they didn't have to watch as much. But then it was done. Like when I was off the computer, like I didn't have access to the internet again until I was back at the computer. I didn't have a smartphone growing up for a while, and I didn't even have my own laptop until I was, I think, in my mid-teens. Um, and so I really didn't have the internet, I only had access when I needed it, like in that kind of moment. And kids or teens nowadays, they get a lot of their information just like the rest of us in the blink of an eye. And even though I, tell that story, like I don't knock phones, I have my iPhone. I'm on social media a lot. I use it every day. And see, oh my God, I'm getting onto so many tangents. And that's not the premise of the whole question here, but I can see that as, probably the reason why like things like print magazines, especially for preteens and teens, are dying out. But then that brings me back to that question, like, is there a decline of those teen heartthrobs now? And is it because we don't have those kind of magazines? Is it because of social media? Like, you've got the it girls or the it boys for sure, right? They're popular, they're photographed and followed by paparazzi, they're booked, they're busy. You know that they're talented and they're cute and they're sought over in the sought after, I guess, in the industry. But I don't know. I'm just really genuinely curious if that's something that's going to kind of go off to the wayside. Because to me, there's something different than, let's say, the Jacob Elordi's or the Timothy Chalamets of the world that we have now. Because again, they are booked, they are busy. We know that they are talented and sought after, but the buzz around them, I guess, is a lot different than the Justin Bieber of it all, or bring it back to the Chad Michael Murrays or the Jesse McCartneys, or the whole of One Direction when they first came out on the scene, right? If that makes sense, it just feels different. Because hear me out. If you were the teen heartthrob of that moment, you were in those magazines, you had those posters, you were on things like TRL on MTV, or you were guest starring in multiple kids shows, and it was an event. Like it was an event for that moment. So Jesse McCartney, right? He was on The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. He was on Hannah Montana. It was huge. It was publicized all over the network. If you were a fan, you were probably TiVoing it. Aaron Carter, he was on Lizzie McGuire for the Christmas episode. That was an event. Like I still vividly remember planting myself in front of the TV to make sure that I watched that episode. You had One Direction on iCarly. You had Justin Bieber, and he was supposed to be on, I think it was True Jackson. Yeah, True Jackson VIP over on Nickelodeon. Huge, astronomical. Even on like a smaller scale, when you had like musical guests on things like So Random, that's where you had like the Cody Simpsons of the world, who may not have been on that level of, Justin Bieber or One Direction of the time, but he still had a lot of fangirls, right? I still would consider him, like one of those heartthrobs of the moment. And, they were meant to come onto that show, draw in an audience, increase those ratings, but it was also a benefit to them because they might be able to get some new fans from the appearance. They were getting that generated buzz. And obviously, maybe that argument is a moot point because I don't watch, one Disney Channel or Nickelodeon heavily anymore. I have zero idea of what programming is there now or what they're doing for promotion. I think the last time I watched something on Disney was Zombies, and that was purely out of curiosity. I have Disney Plus, so sometimes every once in a while like those musical movies, like I watched the Descendants movies and things like that. Sometimes again, it's just out of curiosity. Um, but I have no idea what's going on the network or on the channel. And, so maybe I'm disconnected. But in my heart, I feel like I'm not wrong. Like that appeal, that allure, that screaming at the top of your lungs for the latest teen sensation, I feel like that's something that's just gone now, or if it's not completely gone, I really do feel like it's fading. Now, we're seeing it with a lot of female artists, right? We have our diehard Swifties, and we have some of the up and coming Gen Z pop girls that have their really devoted fan base, right? Like the Tate McRae's, Sabrina Carpenter. Those are the ones I can kind of think of off the top of my head. But again, that is also a very different discussion we're having today. And I'm thinking of simply the earlier time growing up and how this is just seemingly phased out. And it makes me kind of sad, really, for a lot of young fangirls, fanboys, fans all over the globe, because it was such a time. And I really wish I could just talk for hours and kind of put into words or find a way to put into words how it felt to have those kind of, those moments. And we see, I think, glimmers of that in other genres. I'm not an active K-pop stan or a listener, but I do have a lot of friends who are, and I appreciate them. I respect them. They are ride or dies for their biases. And I think that that is absolutely incredible. It does, and it gives me a little bit of the same vibe for sure, because I know that they are, devoted to their favorite groups or their favorite artists. Um, which I also know that a lot of K-pop stans get a lot of flack for that, but never from me. I love you and I respect you and I appreciate you. And I think it's incredible to have those passions because music is so fun and being a stan is so fun. And I think it's awesome to still have that level of fan culture. And, again, let me stop. Definitely a different discussion as well. Because I don't think fan culture within itself is going away. I think that it has evolved, but it's definitely still alive and well in different avenues. Things like Stan Twitter. um, there's discussions and discourses happening over other social media platforms almost daily, a lot on like TikTok. And artists are still having those connections with fans. And so, kind of let me get back to what I was saying. Let me try, because I'm really getting into the weeds on that. But I think that that's kind of been that whole cultural shift when it comes to those teen idols. You know, and who knows, maybe that is part of it. Because again, we've seen those glimpses, but I don't think we've seen such an impact or why am I trying to think of the word? The word that wants to come to my mind is tizzy, and that's an awful word. I hate that word. Uproar, I guess we'll use that. But we haven't seen that kind of like uproar over a teen idol or a teen heartthrob since the times of like Justin Bieber and One Direction. And we have some residual impact of that because there are still avid JB fans out there, myself included. And I know we have fans who have been with the One Direction boys throughout their solo careers, right? We see that with especially like the Harrys. And they have those devoted fans who have been there since the beginning. And sure that, they've accumulated those new fans, but you have a lot of those fans who have been there right from the beginning and they felt that frenzy. Frenzy, that's a good word that I want to use. I think that they felt and they witnessed that frenzy of when they first came on the scene and they were there for those heartthrob moments firsthand. And so who knows, maybe they can also, validate me here, but I don't think that it has been matched in a while. Now, as I've gone through this whole rant or this whole tangent, maybe this is me just simply showing my age, and there's nothing that I hate more than saying back in my day, but it's obviously the premise of this entire episode and probably will for a lot of my content coming up. And back in my day, I think that there was a more of an innocence surrounding it all. Like we were connected and plugged in. I kind of went on that little spiel about the internet, but we didn't have access to near as much as, kids and teens do now. Social media was part of our lives, but it didn't seem to be the root of it. And I think also maybe that might play a contribution to it because there's a lot of just oversaturation with social media as a whole. And again, that causes them to grow up faster, be exposed to more adult things. I've already kind of mentioned that. Influencers, and this is not me going to bash on influencers or get on a rant. I have nothing against them or for them. But people are attached to their phones. People are trying to sell them products or sell them those unattainable lifestyles. They're focusing on trends and aesthetics. Everything is at their fingertips now. And I think that that takes a lot of the appeal out of celebrities, or not, I guess not appeal, but like it takes some of the mystery out about celebrities, or maybe even those potential teen heartthrobs. Because before the surge of social media and having to go viral on TikTok, or you have artists who are going live on TikTok and showing us their day to day, you didn't really get access to your faves that freely. You had paparazzi photos, you had interviews or television appearances, you had those magazines where you would get some of, those interviews, or you'd get quizzes, or you'd get those pictures or those posters. You had fan clubs, right? And you had fan mail. God, I'm really aging myself on this episode. We are downhill from here. But God, I loved fan clubs. I could really go on a whole thing about that, where you could like mail in things and you would get merch and then you would get newsletters that would like be mailed to your house. And, you had all of those things, or you could have the addresses. I don't know. Again, last tangent, hopefully, of the day. But you could go into like those Tiger Beat or those J14 magazines, and in the back, they would have the addresses for the artists in there, your favorite artists. And of course, it wasn't like to their home or anything, it was to their label. But you could write handwritten letters or fan mail, and you could mail them to them. And that is just a very dated art form. But that is how you got access to those celebrities. And so, the Jesse McCartneys, the Aaron Carters, the boy bands of the world, the Justin Biebers, they were still kind of hidden behind this wall. Where it's like you were given a glimpse and then it was taken away. And so it just kind of made you want them more. Like it felt like they were less attainable, so they were more desirable, if that makes sense. Like I know that sounds really toxic, and that probably would for like a real life situation, but in this kind of like parasocial moments, like it was okay. Like because that is kind of what build them up. That's what made it the event, right? That's why it was such a big deal to be able to see them in those kind of capacities, in the guest starring, in those interviews. And I think that's really what kind of made them that teen heartthrob what it was, is because they were just so cute. And they were just in everything, but you still just had that mystery about them. And I think that is gone now. And that is the whole kind of premise of this very random conversation or rambling or thoughts that I'm having today. But yeah, I think that is kind of where we're at with the teen heartthrobs now. I think that they're gone, sadly, or they're on the way out. And yeah. So that's it. That's my take of the day. So what I do is I say that we bring back that one big teen star, or those big teen stars, for the youth. Bring back actual heartthrobs, not just celebrities who are hot. Because I will die on that hill that I think that there is that difference. Maybe I didn't articulate that very well in this conversation, but there is a difference. It's a whole different state of being. It's a whole different vibe. And you can fight me on it. Which again, you can. That's the nice thing about social platforms. You can fight me on if you want to. I want to know, who are some of your celebrity crushes then, now, back when you were younger? Do you think that I am completely wrong? And if I am, please tell me who you think is at a teen heartthrob status today, because I'd love to hear it. I'm always one to admit that I'm wrong. And I want to have those discourses. So you can do all of that by following me on Twitter. It's at the Chew Pod on Twitter. I hope that you enjoyed my ramblings of today. It's just another rambling of another millennial with a microphone, but I'll be doing it every week. So I'd appreciate if you could give me a follow there. Give me a follow wherever you get your podcasts, and I will talk to you next time.